Imagine that we are in a country with lots of monkeys that compete with humans for their livelihood. Yet, we provided food, housing, and health care to these monkeys and treated them just like humans. But all this was at the expense of humans. We didn't balance out the care for humans with that for animals. Consequently, monkeys multiplied and humans died off. Would that be ethical? And what does this have to do with atheism? That's what we'll find out in this episode. All praise be to Allah and peace be upon His Prophet. In the last episode, we saw how morality indicates the existence of Allah, and how the deniers of Allah's existence lack any moral foundation. Today we will see that this denial, this atheism, does not end there, but goes further to cause crime and aggression. When atheists denied Allah, most of them adopted Darwin's theory of evolution as an explanation for human existence. We will discuss this theory scientifically in due course, Allah willing. What concerns us here are the moral implications of Darwinian evolution. To see, for those who adopt evolution as an alternative for Allah's existence, has evolution provided them with any basis for morality, or is it quite the opposite? Darwinian evolution assumes that organisms evolved from a primitive cell through random genetic mutations and natural selection. Natural selection means survival of the fittest, the most able to adapt to the environment. Survival of the fittest means the struggle with species lower on the evolutionary scale. Struggle is the law of nature, according to Darwin. He stated this in his book, The Origin of Species. Then in his book, The Descent of Man, Darwin applied his theory to humans and theorized that man evolved from ape-like ancestors. When Darwin says evolutionary superior, he means white Europeans. As for other races, they are in an intermediate stage between apes, gorillas, and their ancestors, and humans. In other words, they are not fully evolved yet. Darwin based his theory on the assumption that lower races are closer than Europeans to apes in some traits, such as skin color, head circumference, flat nose, frontal bossing, and enlargement of the jaw or lips. Darwin then concluded that the superior human races will not continue to evolve except through the struggle to exterminate the inferior human races. This is the basis of social Darwinism, which involves the application of Darwin's biological concepts to sociology. Accordingly, there is nothing wrong if the races that consider themselves more evolved hunt us on the streets, steal our property, and subjugate us for their benefit, just like we do with animals, because humans, according to Darwin, are simply a more evolved form of animal. So what humans do to animals can be done to us by those who are more evolved than us. Wait a minute, this isn't just speculation. It actually happened. How? In his book, The Descent of Man, Chapter 6, Charles Darwin says, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. With this concept, Darwin fired his bullet at humanity, and Europeans based their genocide and ethnic cleansing campaigns on this concept, especially against Africans, Native Americans, and Australian Aborigines, considering them closer to animals. In the Darwinian view, it is true that many criminal acts were committed before the propagation of Darwin's theory. But evolution relieved the conscience of the criminals by providing scientific justification for their crimes. So they persisted in their criminal acts and escalated the frequency. The record of crimes is too large to be addressed here, but some examples may provide a good idea. After the publication of the theory of evolution, campaigns were launched to exterminate Australian Aborigines in the late 19th century. The vice president of the Royal Society of Tasmania, an island in Australia, James Bernard, wrote, in 1890, it has become an axiom, according to the law of evolution and survival of the fittest, that the inferior human races must open the way for the superior races. We will provide the links for the information we present, as the facts are shocking and almost unbelievable. Moreover, the campaigns included kidnapping Australian Aboriginal children and sending them, in large numbers, to natural history museums in America and Britain to determine whether they represent the missing link between animals and humans in the evolutionary path. The Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, apologized to the stolen generations on February 13, 2008. The headline ran as follows: The National Apology from Kevin Rudd to the Stolen Generations. This is in addition to forced sterilization, which was carried out by Darwinists across the world against less evolved races, or those with undesirable genetic traits, because they were a burden on nature. Thus, their progeny must be halted through sterilization to make them extinct and improve genetic traits, what is known as eugenics. For your information, just 2 years ago, in February 2015, the U.S. House of Representatives approved a compensation of $25,000 for each living victim of forced sterilization. This came after a long struggle, which started with the U.S. Supreme Court decision in 1927 to allow state-enforced sterilization in Virginia. They apologize for stolen generations and compensate for sterilization, but the question remains: are they, by doing so, renouncing Darwinian evolution? Are they admitting through this apology that all humans are biologically equal? Never. They still adopt Darwinism and stubbornly cling to it. Moreover, motivated by Darwinism, white men convinced some African tribes that they were more evolved than others, due to differences in height, nose length, etc. This was one of the motives behind the genocidal wars between tribes who had previously coexisted in peace, such as the tragedy of Rwanda between the Tutsis and Hutus. According to Darwinian ethics, it's okay for a nation to put less evolved humans in human zoos, just like putting animals in animal zoo. This is not just speculation. It actually happened. It was a phenomenon in America and many European countries. You can find the related images and information online. Search for human zoos. There is a shameful photo archive and many articles on this topic, such as The Forgotten History of Human Zoos. But bear in mind that they contain nude images, as some zoos prevented the humans on display from wearing clothes, leaving them completely naked, men and women. They were told to go out to the zoo visitors and turn around, to allow the higher classes to look them over, like animals. This little girl in Brussels, Belgium, was treated by white people as a less evolved specimen. She was kept in a cage and fed like an animal. This is Otabenga in 1906. His family and tribe were killed by merchants in Africa. They then sold him to the Darwinians, who viewed him as evidence for evolution. He was required to have his picture taken with chimpanzees at the Bronx Zoo in New York, and there are many others. This is a picture from France of a woman and her child in a human zoo. This is from a Negro village in France, where blacks were displayed alongside animals. The list of Darwinian tragedies is long. Darwinians were not spared from their own evil, also in the name of Darwinism, as some Darwinians saw themselves as more evolved than others. 40 years after the publication of The Descent of Man, the First World War broke out. What is the relevance of the First World War? Wasn't it caused, as we studied, by the assassination of the Austrian crown prince and his wife by a Serb? Apparently this was only the spark, not enough to explain why Europe exploded and rushed within days to war. But there were other factors which provoked this war: religious, political, and other factors, including the spread of social Darwinism, which primed many Europeans who adopted it to rush into war and behave like wild animals. Because struggle and bloodshed, to them, is the law of nature. Many writers have commented on this Darwinian role in the war, such as the British writer James Joule in his book, The Origins of the First World War, and Richard Hofstadter in his book, Social Darwinism in American Thought, which was written during the Second World War. Furthermore, the Darwinian ideology produced mass murderers such as Hitler, who founded Nazism on the concept of superiority for the Aryan race, as discussed in Darwinism and the Nazi Ethnic Holocaust, and Stalin, as in Yaroslavsky's Landmarks in the Life of Stalin. Yaroslavsky states, at an early age, and while he was still at the ecclesiastical school, Comrade Stalin showed maturity in his critical thinking and revolutionary feelings as he read the works of Darwin and became an atheist. Furthermore, in 2015, CNN published an article titled Wars, a Manifestation of Social Darwinism, which concluded the following: with social Darwinism at play in the jungle of international politics, wars seem to be inevitable. Here, an atheist might say, but there are countless wars for religious motives. First, This comparison with religions in general does not concern us. Religions may be true, distorted, or invalid. Yet we say, we are discussing Darwinism in which war is a goal in itself without any ethics or regulations. This is not Darwinism malpractice, but Darwinism itself. As for war in Islam, we'll discuss later, insha'Allah. Peace be upon you.